Hello and welcome to the first episode of the Social Self podcast. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to my fellow Section D classmates. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the group, I would like to formally introduce ourselves. We are from Group A. I am your host, Miss Margie, Roselle, and we are going to deliver our presentation along with my co-presenters, Mr. Martinez and Mr. Ambrad. In today's podcast, we will be talking through about the social self. In this episode, we will cover up three main points about the social self, which we will come to know and have an in-depth discussion. To paint in broad strokes, we will edify about the four levels of self, the culture as a new global perspective, and the three theories of socialization explained in a comprehensive image. So that will be the overall structure of our discourse. Be sure to listen all the way through for the details. Fasten your seatbelts, everyone, as we are about to explore all about the social self.
Hello guys, my name is Neo Martinez and I'll be talking about the personification of the self and the four levels it is divided into. Those four levels mainly being the social level, the psychological level, the neural level, and the molecular level.
Pleasant day to all of you. The name is Lorenz and I will be talking about culture as new global perspective. But before that, I should say a few things about myself. My name is Lorenz Humbert Ambrad and I am 20 years old. I am a level 1 BS Medical Technology student here in Silliman University.
As a visual detailed analysis of a group's collective insights on the topic of the social self, we highlight the following artwork. We have intricately come up with a colorful, comprehensive image as presented on this screen, informally entitled The Self in a Social World. This work of art focuses primarily on the elements that comprise and shape the social self in the process of socialization. Its predominant theories, as well as cultural and societal influences, are all featured in this collage, subsequently encompassing and simply trying to point to various multi-layered figures situated in a different segment of the artwork. We will now critically evaluate and dissect our team's comprehensive image piece by piece as we highlight our individual takeaways judiciously.
So if we can direct our gazes to the image on the upper left side of the graphic, we have the personification of the self and its four levels. First, we have the social self. The social self is the most superficial and familiar level. This level of the self contains hierarchies and sublevels like families, neighborhoods, regions, nations, states, and etc. Second, we have the psychological self. The psychological level talks about self-concepts and specifically what individuals apply to themselves. This can be taken as how people refer to themselves as either introverted or extroverted, or how people may classify themselves a certain gender, ethnicity, or nationality. Third is the neural self. The neural level talks about how neurons in the brain affect how individuals perceive themselves, relating back to the psychological self. A proper representation of the neural level would be how photons of light stimulate retinal cells within the eyes, initiating the visual processes of the brain, leading to sight, which leads to seeing social groups and levels, and etc. Finally, we have the molecular self. The molecular self overall speaks about genetics and how genes affect an individual's behavior. Genetics effects on behavior are displayed by studies that find higher correlations between some features in identical twins than in non-identical twins. For example, in tendencies toward mental illnesses such as schizophrenia.
As we can see here in the middle and a bit to the right side in the upper part, we can see the words culture, self, culture, and diversity. The self, or how we view ourselves, are said to be linked with the culture that we grew up in. Our standards, morals, practices, and the way we think, among other things, are deeply influenced or shaped by it. Different cultures from different parts of the world see themselves in a different way with other people from different cultures. When a certain place is culturally diverse, they learn many things about other cultures, and at the same time, they learn many things about themselves when they interact with each other. This is because of the abundance and the difference of ideas that are present and are continuously being interchanged. One could realize that something he or she has been doing normally on a daily basis is completely wrong and forbidden in other culture.
All three of these thinkers have contributed to our modern understanding of self-development. Firstly, the looking glass self is a philosophical theory introduced by Charles Horton Cooley. Cooley built on this foundation with an analogy of a looking glass that became the key symbol of the lifelong development of his social self-ideal. According to Cooley, our image of who we are is reflected in us through our interactions with others. Cooley believed that the self developed through social interactions, namely by interpreting and internalizing the reactions and judgments of others. Our self-concept was the looking glass that reflected our thoughts about the impressions of others through the ability to see ourselves from their point of view. His looking glass concept had three parts. We first consider how we appear to others, then we weigh the reactions and estimations of our appearance to them. Lastly, we internalize their reactions and evaluations, and in so doing, develop our own emotions and judgments about their estimation, which in turn shapes our self-concept. The self is a mere reflection of a multitude of social interactions over the life course, and this is why it is indeed a mirror reflecting our interconnectedness. Secondly, tabula rasa is a philosophical theory introduced by John Locke. Locke argues that at birth, the mind is a tabula rasa, which is a blank slate that we fill with ideas as we experience the world through the five senses. So by idea, Locke means whatsoever is the object of the understanding when a person thinks. So in other words, an idea is anything we experience or reflect on, and Locke's key point is we can only get such ideas from the senses. So our minds cannot create ideas, but Locke argues that we can only combine them. So ideas are thus atomic in nature and can form complex, unique structures, but the constituent parts are all ultimately obtained from sensory experience. Thirdly, the idea of role-taking is fundamental to the philosophical theory of social self, which is established by no other than George Herbert Mead. Mead held the notion about the steps involved in a socialization process. He pointed out that an important part of socialization is to learning the process of role-taking. Through the process of role-taking, we became aware of behaviors associated with certain statuses and began to act them out. For Mead, this is the most fundamental aspect of socialization. Children learn early on that all behaviors are symbolic. Mead said this takes place in three straight stages to develop self, which is the imitation, the play, and the game stage. Altogether, these elements oscillate to ramp up how we recognize the self in its totality. We have explored the broad notion that self is fostered and indeed molded by experiences and interactions in the social world is probably the major takeaway from this topic. Ultimately, through these collaborative explorations, we not only discover ourselves deeper, but we also manage to learn just how hugely important it is to support a balanced society for other people. Lo and behold, this ends our team's podcast about social self justified in a comprehensive image. Thank you for listening, and here's to an ameliorating self-understanding.